Georgia, yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, Georgia, yeah. Oh, girl, yeah. Mighty Georgia. Mm-hmm. Stood there boldly, sweating in the sun. Felt like a million, felt like number one. Heights of summer, never felt as strong. Like a rock. I was 18, didn't have a care. Working for peanuts, not a dime to spare. But I was lean, solid everywhere, like a rock. My hands are steady, eyes so clear and bright. My walk had a purpose, my step was quick and light. And I held firm to what I felt was right, like a rock.
Good morning, viewers. Welcome to a special episode of Safe Distance and Save Lives. We are in COVID times and we are going through a lot. Be it in the East or in the West, unrest is everywhere. And one thing common we find is it's the marginalized people. It is the marginalized people who are facing the brunt of this all. There's a lot going on, and we have an eminent panel here with us. We have, these people are all community leaders, community participants, activists, and I will go one by one and introduce you to them. I'll start with Kyle, who has come all the way from US. He has joined us. Kyle, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, thank you for having me, Malika. My name is Kyle Mitchell. I am a Toastmaster with Malika, and I am a criminal justice reform advocate, and have supported the Innocence Project over the years, and also worked with women's prisons in the Austin, Texas area where I'm at, with a nonprofit called Truth Be Told that helps women in prison tell their stories and heal. And so I've been involved a lot with criminal justice reform over the years, and now with all of the protests and tragedies here in the United States, getting more involved with the Black Lives Matter movement. And it's close to home to me because I am in an interracial marriage with a Black woman as my wife. So it's close to home to me, and I appreciate you having me on today.
Thank you, Kyle. Thank you for joining us. I have Station on this side, and she is from Toronto, and I quickly finished an interview with her, so I will now ask her to introduce herself to the panel, please.
Hi, so my name is Station Frederick, and I am here in Toronto. Thank you, Malika, for having me. I run two organizations that focus on supporting the Black community. One is called Braids for AIDS, that raises awareness around HIV/AIDS within the African, Caribbean, and Black community here in Canada and internationally. I've done a lot of work in the prison with young men and around not only just in the justice system and sort of navigating that, but also around sexual health, mental health, and looking at a holistic sort of response to these young people. As the executive director of a youth charity here in Toronto that supports mainly Black youth, it's providing them with a number of different services to, again, support the holistic aspects. So all the different needs of the young people, whether it's through their academics, to employment, to justice, but also working from a community development framework. And outside of that, I teach grant writing and community development at a college here in Toronto.
magazine publisher. I publish a magazine by the name of SMJ Magazine. It's a lifestyle magazine. We cover like arts and entertainment, beauty and fashion, health and wellness, faith and community. We also give small businesses in the community a platform to tell their business story. Recently, I produced a documentary, a women's documentary is about the Me Too. It's about eight. It's called What About Us. It's on Me Too and Beyond. It talks about 8 women from the 5 major cultural backgrounds tell their story of abuse in diverse locations. I also am a group facilitator for a women's group to involved with women escaping domestic violence by the name of Canadian Center for Women Empowerment. It's out of Ottawa, Ontario, but I'm the Toronto affiliate. So we're involved with that and giving women some resources and information and escaping violence and being able to give them a platform to tell their stories as well and help in whatever way we can.
Hi everybody, I'm Kareem. Shelly is also my mom. And myself personally, I'm a community leader and activist, especially for at-risk youth. I live here in the Jane Finch community, in the west end of Toronto. So front lines, I see every day the things that these youth are affected by and the way all these things are going on. I see it every day with the youth. I'm one of them myself that I grew up, so I see and know what they go through, and I really try to use my voice as a platform to speak these truths out, because a lot of things get either washed away or unheard. And I think that we can be, as leaders, we can be voices for the voiceless. And so I try to use my platform. I am a writer as well. So right now, we're in development with my mother. We're making a documentary about When They Don't Come Home, talking about the traumas felt by mothers and also community members when Black sons, and the fear that mothers have when they're raising these sons, not just Black sons, any mother, when they're raising sons, and the fear of when they don't come home. It could be any kind of circumstance. Their child may not come home. That's a debilitating fear that a lot of mothers face, and that's actually a project that we're working on right now.
But I think what has happened during COVID-19 is that people have now been able to center themselves, right? And so you have this where people now understand what it is to be out of a job, now understand what it means to be, out of food. And before, many people didn't have that lived reality that many people, racialized, Black bodies, those who are living in poverty, sort of understood before. But now I think there's that understanding. Furthermore, I think you have just this sensationalization of everything that is happening. And, here in Toronto, we have not been sort of immune from police brutality. I speak of my experience when I was a counselor in my career, where I was held at gunpoint by Peel Police, which is a division here in Canada, in Toronto, the Greater Toronto, and it was while I was helping a young man. So even as we do the work out in community, many of us are putting ourselves out there to be praised from the police system. And so many of us now too are sharing our stories. And that we're understanding that this cannot go on. And, Black Lives Matter have brought this to attention before, and we were trying to do peaceful protests for a long time. So Kaepernick, he kneeled. we took walks, and nothing happened. And so I'm not the one that's going to go with a placard. I do my protest in my different ways. I do it in the 4 walls of the organization that I work with, which is ensuring that there is funding for our young Black boys, our young children, and I could help to development. That is my protest, right? And that's my element of change. Some people work in policy and in government to try to make change. And then some need to go take a cardboard and walk down the streets. And I think we are all just fed up of the policing of our bodies in so many different ways. And this is not just a police issue. This is other white people policing our bodies, from our employment standpoint, where there's micromanagement and there's microaggressions. It's a feeling when you walk into the store and someone decides to follow you. I think it's a boiling up of all of that that has resulted in this sort of protest that we're seeing.
After, so I've seen kind of both sides of it, how the different kinds of policing, like over policing and under policing, because where I moved to in Toronto was considered a very at-risk neighborhood. Jane and Finch area is considered bad, but I have more positive experiences with police here than I have in Peel growing up. So seeing that contrast, it kind of gave me an understanding and a balance of seeing that the issue with how the police react to young Black males, especially, it's more of a worldwide issue. I have friends that are also in America in different states. A friend of mine is in Michigan and also Pennsylvania, and they're saying the same things that you're saying here as well, Kyle. I'm seeing more openings for structural change. And that's the one thing we've been lacking for the longest time. I mean, we've been going through these same police brutality issues and even being caught on camera for many years. Rodney King was about 30 years ago, right? And the same kind of thing that's going on today. I see today and this issue happening now as an opportunity for us to get structural change. And I really think that is a really big positive that we can look at, because a lot of times, like even myself, being a youth and being from these at-risk areas and seeing the struggle firsthand, sometimes I get disheartened. I feel like, oh, well, there's nothing's going to change. It's just going to keep happening. But I really am enthused this time by seeing the global outcry and everybody's kind of calling for justice, which has been a little bit different than other times. I see more people of all nationalities, all races, different countries, all try to stand up. And that's for the first time in my life. I'm just about 30 years old, and it's the first time in my life I've seen that where worldwide people are calling up. So I do take this as a really positive chance. So, and I also agree with how Station was mentioning, people can protest in many different ways. Some people may be going out, being on the front lines, picketing. Me, myself, I personally don't want to be out in the front lines, but I try to take an advantage of, well, as a young Black man, what can I do to help other young Black men that are growing up? So what I do is each one teach one. I try to teach about Black history as much as possible. And also, today I wore this jersey. It's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, basketball player. Actually, yesterday or the day before was the, I think, 50th anniversary of the big conference that all the athletes had with Muhammad Ali, all the Black athletes of the time in the 60s. They all met together and they were speaking about same injustices are going on now. So I felt it appropriate to wear this while we have this discussion as well right now. So
Week has been very, very hard for a lot of Black mothers, grandmothers, aunts, and I identify with a lot of these women because even before all this happened, I'm always paranoid, anxiety, calling my son like all the time, and it drives him actually crazy. Like, it's like, Mom, get a life. But I know the anxiety even before all this. So I think, there has to be change. And I think it's good that there's social media, there's cameras now to show what's really going on, what some of these Black men have to go through, because now you hear all these other stories are popping up of police brutality. And if somebody was not filming it, we would never know. We would not be aware that this is going on. So there's a heightened of awareness right now that we all need to do something. And I'm happy to hear that the Prime Minister said that they recognize there's institutional racism and they're going to do something about it. But I think we've heard some of this talk before, so we actually want to see change now. And I'm optimistic that there would be some change, but because there's always a lot of talk and a lot of meetings going on, but we don't see anything happening. So I'm hoping with all this media coverage, yeah, it's good that there's also Black media, there is social media, everybody's like this panel we're having now. So our voices are being heard. People are coming out now telling their stories. So there's a lot more awareness.
The national channels and even what was going on with international channels, the social media. And there were certain channels, and I know their ideologies, so they were following them. But there was one thing was about the media was forced to notice is because of the social media, the capturing of evidence, more evidence, right? So
Yes.
I wanted to bring that Kyle to, because he has been working in the justice system and all. So do you, because it took about 1 week to even to come like to get the people, and then they were not sure what, what, how to convict them. As you said, we have to wait and see what is going to happen. So how does what are the finer points here, Kyle? Like, why does the conviction take so much time, and what is
Yeah.
really needed for it? Is that and that it is there a need for a change in the justice system? You think?
Well, the easy answer, yes. Of course, there is need for change in the justice system in the United States and in many countries. We can do better. The system can do better because so much power is in the hands of prosecutors. In this case, we were really, really lucky, fortunate, blessed that Minnesota had prosecutors that were on the right side of history in this case. They aggressively and at the instruction and encouragement of the governor and the mayor and so forth do that. But so many other places around the world and around the US do not. Prosecutors overcharge and use the law as a weapon against uh, usually poor black men more than any other kind of demographic. And uh, so what we saw here was actually swifter charging and arrests than almost ever happens. And if you see a lot of the legal scholars and lawyers and so forth have been saying that. So I'm proud of them for doing that. It's rare that it happens that quickly. And I can speak firsthand. Last year, a year ago, almost to the day of George Floyd's murder, I was serving the very first time on a jury. And it wasn't a murder case, it was a child abuse case. But uh, I got to see really how important it is to get it right and get it right the first time. We took 3 or 4 days longer than they thought that it was going to. And that was worth it because the person that we wound up convicting uh, deserved it. And if we had made a mistake and rushed it, it could have been horrific for the victim, and also for posterity. The legacy that some of these cases, even small ones, make on society, local and broader. It just amazing. So it's important that they got it right, and I'm glad they did it as quickly as possible. But I think they wanted, as they expressed, the FBI too, they wanted to take their time and make sure and get it right.
So what I think has happened is that, while it did happen swiftly, I think there was a careful sort of articulation of what the charges need to be. What I think too as well has happened, and I've heard it, this sort of rhetoric from different people. Historically, what has happened is that people have looked at individualized issue. Oh, this person was a criminal. Oh, this person, had this, and made it to be that it was around the individual. But we know that in society, there's the microsystem, the mesosystem, all these different systems. And so we have to look at the broader sort of structure that is impacting our communities. And so I think when people can understand that it's not just about the if it was a crime that was taking place, but a system that thinks that it's okay to shoot a black man or step on the nail of a black man, and have his life slowly go out of him. And then I'll bring into the situation of here in Toronto, where a young woman was tragically met to death from falling 25 feet from, an apartment building, and, people saying, different things that, okay, it's the individual, maybe she had mental health issues, her mother was, on drugs, all these different rhetorics. And I said, does it matter whether or not all those different circumstances that somebody has died as she was going down on the 24th floor, as you go down the 23rd, 22nd, 21, 20, as she falls down to her death? Does it matter of all the other things that people want to talk about? So I think what we are now realizing, people, not, I wouldn't say I now realize, I think people are realizing that is a structural racism. How many other individuals, police have been called to support white girls and they didn't die? Why it is that a Black girl fell to her death from 25 stores? And so I think this is why our community, again, is that we need justice. Still a little bit behind the United States right now in terms of seeing some of these swift justice pieces, even though we have Black men who are the head of some of our major cities. You have Peter Slawley, he's in Ottawa. You have Mark Sanders that is here in Toronto. And I'm sorry to say, but I think they are the token Black man in there to say we're doing good work, but we're not seeing the changes that we want to see and the swift action on police brutality. People are still being on, having leave with pay. Whereas I saw in the United States, it was quick. It was a firing right away. So I think we in Canada still have ways to move forward in terms of the structural racism.
It all comes back down to make these structural changes is changing the education of how people have a mindset. So instead of people having a mindset where they're even questioning whether it's okay or not, whether this Black man lost his life, regardless of what type of person he is or he's not, you should feel bad about a person losing their life just out of a positive Black images. I mean, I think one of the biggest things that's holding some Black males, especially down, is that constant negative imagery. Also, you can even be told in your home that you're a great person, you have all these aspirations and have all those motivations, but when you go outside in the world, it's much different, the type of imagery that you get back. And it takes a really strong will of self and knowledge of self to be able to overcome that. And I think one thing that will help that a lot is this positive reinforcements. We want to see more images on TV of Black male doctors, lawyers, professionals of all kinds of fields, not just seeing the same stereotypical your basketball player, entertainer, or so-called so forth. Even though they can be great at those professions, I'm not going to knock that, but we want to see more diversity because there is a very diverse palette. We're all over the world and we've done amazing things, and I think it's really important to know about the great things that Black people have done in this world, and it helps everybody. It's not just education for Black people, it's education for everybody. Everybody would love to hear about the great things that Black people have done, not just hearing about the slavery story. So it's always connected with the negativity.
Profiling, and I identify with a lot of Black moms that this is what we go through because we know what's going to happen. This is stuff that's been happening to them from they're in school. I've had a few school incidents when the kids were younger of little simple things, and they're just accusing the kids of doing this and doing that. So it starts very young. It starts in elementary. It starts probably even in daycare. It starts with the child on the playground. And so as a mom, you're constantly anxious. It doesn't matter how much you teach them to be respectful. If you're stopped by the police, say, yes, sir, do everything you're supposed to do. It's not a guarantee that they won't be killed or whatever the case may be. So my husband is Caucasian, is white, Canadian. We've only been stopped, I think, one time over 11 years. And it was a traffic violation. I know differently if I was out with my son, how many times I would be stopped. So there is a difference. And there is
somewhere in the West End, in my somewhat area. And she just calls me. This is not the first time this has happened. Well, And she just called me, "Oh, Kareem, are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm fine. I'm just at home. I'm chilling." And then we got to talking, and she's just like, "Oh, I'm just so worried. I heard young black male, the name, it almost sounded like yours." And we were just talking about it, and I said, "You know what? I really never even thought about it. It's like that debilitating fear that mothers have. It doesn't matter if I could be home, I'm doing absolutely nothing, but in her mind of all the possibilities, and then you're seeing it on the news constantly.
Yeah.
She thinks it has a real psychological effect on mothers, especially. And I'm grateful that we have such a close relationship. We can talk about these things, and I get to realize it a lot for myself, even seeing it. I know a lot of times where I know I'm okay with my neighborhood. I can go out, but I gotta think about, oh, okay, well, she knows where I live, and she's not with me, so she may know that I'm okay, but it's still that fear is always there, and it's something that's really powerful. And I think that there's a lot of things we can do to try and change that too, because it's not something that's not right. No mother should be in fear of their child not coming home, right? Everybody should feel safe that their child is gonna return home no matter what they're doing.
So let's just take up a birthday or retirement, and you invite people and they come, but they bring a balloon that says happy birthday Karen, happy birthday Becky, happy birthday, and your name is Station, right? It's an erasure of you and your experiences in that moment as you try to recognize what is happening to your people. So when people says this all lives matter, to a rebuttal to all life, yes, it might be Becky's birthday, it might be Karen's birthday, but I'm talking about me, and it's a recognition of me. Statistics that shows that Black men are stopped more times than any other race and then gender. And then you talk about what is happening in the justice system, how many more are convicted for sometimes the same crime. We see that there's so many people locked up in prison for drug charges, for having 20 years sentence for drug charges, and then somebody else will get 2 years off. There's this discrimination.
Even it was beautiful. Reggie Watts, the DJ on James Corden's show, late night show, he's biracial, and he even said he's struggling with it because he's been trying his whole life to not be Black. He's just trying to be a human, and he doesn't want to say I'm Black or I'm white or anything. He wants to just be human. And now he's having to realize that there are times when we have to make that stand and make that statement, and it's not the place to say, okay, all lives matter or whatnot, in the middle of a conversation. That's not the conversation. We can have a human rights conversation, a broader civil rights conversation, but the message of Black Lives Matter is just those 3 words. And Iyanla Vanzant tells the story about the man sitting on his porch with the dog that never moves, and the guy says, well, why is your dog sitting there? He's laying on a rusty nail. He's got to be in pain and bleeding. I can see it bleeding. Why doesn't he move? And the owner says, well, it doesn't hurt bad enough yet. Now it's finally hurt bad enough.
I don't think Trump is missing in action. I think he's right in action. It's just in a negative light, and I think that is part of the reason for the fueling of tensions and the riots that we're seeing, because for his entire sort of tenure, we've seen this divide in many different things, whether it's race divide or it's gender divide, and the things that he says, it breeds the hate. But as we look here in Canada, 3 days ago, the premier, who, for the most part during COVID-19, I was like, oh, Ford Nation, because his name is Doug Ford. So we're like, oh, Ford Nation, he's doing quite good. But then he made a statement in regards to, structural racism doesn't exist in Canada, and, kind of pass it down. This is, while we might have our issues, it's not the same as in, the United States. So you have different types of racism. You have covert and you have overt racism, right? So in the States, no problem. They will just, call you the N-word. At least you know upfront what you're dealing with. Here in Canada, it's unfortunate because a lot of things were so polite. We say we say sorry. That's the kind of thing. So people are not seeing the type of racism, but it does exist. 3 days after our premier of Ontario, that's the province, he then sort of retract or, backtrack his statement in regards to, not structural racism does exist, and, there's the need for speaking, and there needs to be resources for the Ontario Black Youth Action. The Ontario Black Youth Action Plan was something that was created underneath the previous party. And as soon as they came into power, that program was cut, right? And then all of a sudden, in the last 3 days, there has been that mobilization of resources, and this is what we're going to do in the community. But unfortunately, again, do we know that this is something that is authentic? Do they understand that, the UN have proclaimed the decade of people of African descent, and that there's this need from the UN under certain sort of reforms that needs to happen in the community to be done for Black people. There's a bigger thing than just coming out and sort of rebutting and saying, we're giving this money. Listen, money will come, right? But it's more than just the money. It's as a system. We see so many different organizations right now. Oh, we're donating $1 million there, this amount of $1 million there. But then when you look at who's in their C-suites, who are in their senior leadership, in all these different places, are white folks that don't get it. So unless on all these different systems, there is representation, there is understanding, there's no money that you could pull into my organization that will allow me to serve these Black youths the way that I need to serve them. So I think the leadership has to come from all different places.
Racism going on. And one thing that I've seen different over there for the first time, one of the governors or one of the congressmen there, they came out and they said they're opening up a anti-discrimination hotline for Asians to call in and share their stories. And I thought to myself, I said, wow, well, police brutality against, Black Americans has been happening for ages. I've never heard of this. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I've never heard this being offered up or something that, and I looked at that as, see, when it's sometimes with others, it's so simple to find the remedy. The remedy comes up just naturally. It's like, oh, well, yeah, we're going to do the right thing. And for so long, we've kind of taken the backseat of kind of just like, oh, we're not going to address that issue, kind of put it to the back burner. And we're still, as Black people or African Americans, we're still looking for the same rights that we were asking for 60, 70 years ago. And again, it goes back to that education change. People's mindsets need to change where they're not even trying to argue with you when you bring up Black Lives Matter. Yeah, that should be common sense that Black Lives Matter. Everybody's life does matter. But the fact that we even have to bring that up, that's the issue that we need to stay focused on and not keep going on to, oh, all lives matter, blue lives matter, different. Yeah, all those groups we know and everybody's been supporting for all these other groups, but we're the one group that hasn't gotten that support. So this is our time where I'm happy to see it's a little bit changing now that everyone is showing that support. In the action of these insurance companies who are backing up the pensions, well, you can pressure them to make a liability clause where if an officer has one or two or X amount of incidences, he's in danger of losing his pension and his pretty much livelihood. And I really think that people will change their behaviors very quickly when it starts to affect their bottom line.
Yeah, I've seen so many local protest leaders have to break in the protest to tell all the people there, many of whom are of diverse backgrounds, to say, look, y'all, we have to stop. We can't threaten the effectiveness of this protest by violence and leading to curfews and leading to martial law. That's what a lot of our leaders really want, and we can't give that to them. We have to peaceably protest and march. And so I'm sad that we have to see that, but of course I understand the anger, and everyone is dealing with it differently. Just like everyone deals with grief differently, we're all grieving during this time, and I'm happy to see lots of people, especially white people, stand up and stand by and protect our Black and brown brothers and sisters. But we all have to remember that if it turns violent, we're not really helping the cause.
People just want their voices to be heard. I was happy to see that there were not only Black youths and Black young adults, there were white young kids. Everybody's getting it, and I think basically they just want their voices to be heard. They just want to express their feelings. They're angry, and they just want somebody to listen, and for leadership to take up what they're asking for and make some changes. And I think, yeah, so far I haven't heard of any really bad incidents. Maybe they might have wanted to shuffle, but part of them, maybe they're not of Black Lives Matter. Different groups pop up having different protesting, but I think for the most part it's been peaceful.
So even I know in America, a lot of the cities where they had the violence, it wasn't necessarily the people that were going out peacefully protesting with their signs. It was other agitators coming in just to cause violence or cause a disruption, and that is getting people off course, because just like you're saying, the police and the government, they want people to cause a riot because then they can come in and just shut everything down, right? So I'm happy that in Toronto we were blessed that this weekend's protest went through peacefully. I did see, like on Instagram, I did see some of the same things that are happening in America with people planting bricks and stuff like that to try and incite the rioting. But I'm happy that nobody took the bait in trial. They're glad it was all peaceful and people actually came out, and I feel like those things need to happen more.
The protests. But again, a lot of these stories that, become sensationalized is what happens in the States. And so, of course, Eric Gardner, many others. But in Canada, I have not seen that much of sharing of information about what is happening. So I think while we have reached a tipping point, I think, of course, the United States, it's a little bit more intense.
Thank you very much for being here today, and have a wonderful weekend.
I dream. Now, where they go? 20 years now, I don't know. I sit and I wonder sometimes where they've gone. Sometimes late at night, when I'm bathing in the firelight, moon come calling, ghostly white, I recall, like a rock, and I stood arrow straight, like a rock, the gates with a weight on my shoulder. Like a rock, my song on my skin. Like a rock, or against the wind. I see myself again.